I think this quote that John Gottman says about successful couples view their problem as challenges to be faced together.
Ooh,
And I see a lot of couples have this mindset of, okay, no, that's your problem that you need to figure out, or this is happening,
yes.
rather understanding that no matter what it is, like we're one, right? That's with your bank account, that's emotionally what we dealing with, what you dealing with. I carry that too, and vice versa. And in the area of problems or
Yeah.
challenges or goals, like we have that, we share in all of those things, right? In terms of the oneness in which we walk in. And so I feel like we tend to kind of separate, like, okay, well, you're dealing with that and that's your problem, and not see them as a challenge for us to face together. And there is
Yeah.
a scripture that I was reminded of, and it's Ecclesiastes 4:12. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but
Mm.
two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken.
We still do. We still do. We still do.
Still do after all this time at the altar. I alter my mind and vow to God I love you till he make his return. The rain should be the least of your concern. Under God's umbrella, I promise to provide and preserve his word and to serve your mind and spirit. Let me drive the boat. I promise I'ma steer it. The devil cannot get near it. You'll know this soon as you hear it. You need me, I need you. Even after the altar, we still do.
What's
And
going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of We Still Do. We are your host. I'm Jermaine.
I'm Lena.
And whether you're newly married, you've been married for a little while, or you've been in this thing for a long time, We Still Do is for you. Now, remember
Yes.
to like, share, subscribe, especially if you find this episode helpful. That way we can get out and we can help some more couples. So
Yes.
with that
Absolutely.
being said, honey, what's up? How you doing? How you feeling?
What's
Talk
up?
to me.
How you doing? Okay, I'm good, or whatever, you know.
Okay.
A little tired. Our sleep was definitely disturbed, but I'm feeling really, really good.
That's good. I'm glad.
How are you feeling?
I'm good. This week was good. I ain't gonna lie. This week was good.
A lot of good things
A
happening
lot
for
of
you.
good things. Even, the Lord convicted me a little bit. That's been good.
Yeah,
So
it's always good. Bring out that
always good.
holiness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
You look real, like, distractingly good today. I mean, you look good every day, but it's just something. Maybe it's the lighting, like you just glowing or something. I'm gonna try to get through this, but
It could be that. It could be that self-love you see on me. Just taking care of myself.
I actually
Oh no, that was a shameless plug, man. Shout out there.
okay.
Shout out to my dog Retro, man. Self-love merch for sure. Today, we're still talking about commitment, but we also want to talk about something that often gets overlooked when we talk about commitment is the fact that like conflict is inevitable.
Yeah.
And in order to like stay committed, you have to have this persevering spirit about you.
Yeah, for
And so that's kind of what we, want to talk about today. So I'll just kind of let you kick it off. Like, tell me about like the need for perseverance right now in marriage.
I think there's always a need, because there's different seasons. There's a season for everything, and you're always gonna go through things, whether that's highs or lows, good or bads. And so in order to be and stay committed and to persevere, I mean, that's the only thing that's gonna get you to the end. And by end, I mean like till death do us part. So I believe that commitment and perseverance kind of go hand in hand, the way that I view it. So yeah. And
Okay.
conflict is obviously is a part of that. I don't think conflict is a season. I think conflict we deal with in marriage often.
Mhm.
Some, it may be a little bit more than others, but it's how you navigate that, in terms of your level of commitment and your perseverance,
Okay. And
your
so
perspective too.
I think it's good to just address like kind of like your perspective on conflict, because depending on how you see conflict, it also um it influences how you show up when you get in conflict.
For
So
sure.
I just want to ask you, like, how do you see conflict?
How do I see it? I see conflict as an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity to better understand you. And I see it as an opportunity for growth. Like, conflict is not this negative thing. I think it can be viewed as something that's positive, that's actually making us stronger and drawing us closer to one another and strengthening our bond if we approach it with the right mindset with the understanding of like, okay, I want to better understand you and what you're needing or what your request is, whatever the conflict is. But this is a growth opportunity. So that's
Yeah.
how I view conflict.
Yeah. And I think I want to say this, and I want to say it this way because I feel like it's very true. You won't be successful in your relationship if you don't know how to navigate conflict. Oftentimes when we think of conflict, we think of something that can get resolved.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. There is conflict that is resolvable, but something we miss when we talk about conflict is the fact that conflict needs to be managed. Like when we need to make decisions, for example, like we can come to a resolve. But when we talk about differences in personality, which is where a lot of conflict comes from, um, that's the part that's difficult because you can't change who you are per se. Like there's a particular temperament that you have that you were born with. You know, some people might be more prone to run towards conflict because they want to address it. They want to, attack it head on. And then you have some people who just naturally don't like conflict. They're
Yeah.
more
Avoiding.
like conflict avoidant. And so naturally that temperament, whether you're a loud person, whether you're a calm person, whether you're outgoing, whether you're an introvert, like these are different things that like make conflict possible. I think, well, I guess even two people who are the same can have conflict.
Oh, for sure.
But like I think of that because when I work with couples, especially in therapy, a lot of times they get stuck on something that isn't necessarily resolvable. It's more about just managing that. And so many times we look at our person through a filter of, I mean, you talked about it. I think we talked about this yesterday. We were talking about how when you get married over the 80% of the person that you find adorable, attractive, whether it's how they look, whether it's how they're kind-hearted, whatever. Like you get married for those things. They're funny, but then there is the 20%, especially when you get married early on, that you overlook.
Yeah.
Whether they can be sarcastic. Their sarcasm at one point was funny, but now when they get sarcastic, it's sharp. And so now as time goes on, what happens is you start to look at the 20%, and through that lens, you start to magnify all the things that you don't like about the person.
Yeah.
And so now when you go into conflict, you have this perspective of, man, like I really don't like the fact that you just will not do the dishes. Like I don't like the fact that when you take a shower, you will leave your towel on the floor. Like things like that.
Yeah.
And it's
Little
small
things.
stuff in comparison. You know what I'm saying? But as time goes on, we start looking at those things, as problematic.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll just pass that to you.
I think this quote that John Gottman says about successful couples view their problem as challenges to be faced together.
Ooh.
And I see a lot of couples have this mindset of, okay, no, that's your problem that you need to figure out, or this is happening, rather understanding that no matter what it is, like we're one, right? That's with your bank account. That's emotionally what we dealing with, what you dealing with. I carry that too, and vice versa. And in the area of problems or challenges or goals, like we have that, we share in all of those things, right? In terms of the oneness in which we walk in. And so I feel like we tend to kind of separate, like, okay, well, you're dealing with that and that's your problem, and not see them as a challenge for us to face together. And there was a scripture that I was reminded of, and it's Ecclesiastes 4:12. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. What stood out to me about that scripture is, so there's times, let's say we're going through conflict, right? But when you're arguing and you guys are going head to head and butting heads with each other, then what we don't often realize is, for one, the enemy is just distracting us, because it can be that 20% that you just talked about, something so small that now has become so big because we've allowed that to be magnified and to become our focus. And with that, the enemy distracting us, we're going head to head like we're each other's enemies, but your spouse is not your enemy. And then our backs are not covered. Our backs are exposed to the enemy for attack. Now, and if we're back to back, like the scripture just said, then we can conquer all. And that's how we're supposed to fight. Like, not fight each other, but fight back to back. We're on the same team, right? Like, you're not my enemy. And I just really feel like the enemy tries to distract in that way. Yeah. And while you're going head to head and arguing and not dealing with conflict in a way that's manageable, as you said, then now there's a wedge being built in between us.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's the work that it requires that a lot of people don't like, putting in the work, because honestly, like, I think we do a great job of that. But I know in moments where, for example, let's just say I'm tired, because when we talk about like conflict is still in the midst of having kids, having to work, dealing with personal issues, whether you have to deal with some grief with your family, whether you lose relatives, like, it's still in the midst of that. And you still have to, go to work, and you still have to do the things. And so a lot of people don't want to put in the effort because it's just like, I don't really have that energy. But like, it makes me think of like when I'm tired, like, I don't be wanting to, you know what I'm saying? Like, for example, when I come home, like my profession is literally listening to problems and helping people work through and manage and do the things. And, I want to come home and I want to disciple and I want to, show up for everybody. And there's nights where I do that better than others, but then there's nights where like I'm just sitting at the table at dinner and I'm fried. Like, I'm talking about KFC fried. Like, I'm literally
just mentally done. Yeah.
I'm literally sitting there and like the only thing my brain can do is like, my brain is just like, it just feels good to like be nothing right now. And so in those moments, like, really understanding like in what space you are to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And part of persevering is even having conversations about conflict. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we address conflict? Like, when there is an issue, like, one thing me and you talked about is when we can't come to an agreement, who do we go to outside of our marriage that we trust that can help us? And that's like our safety plan, you know what I'm saying, if we can't, because we don't want to stay in this place of like, I'm gonna see you through this mucky lens. So me and you, we put on a workshop a while back, and one of the things that we were teaching couples is like, one of the most harmful things that can happen or shape how you shape the longevity of your relationship is lag time when it comes to, talking about issues. Because if we have this elephant in the room that we're not addressing and we're constantly dancing around, what's happening is we're building our life around something that never got resolved. And so because it didn't get resolved, now we're looking at each other in a way that is not true in my perspective of like who you are.
Right.
And so now it's like, because the last time we talked about this before we swept it under the rug, like, in my brain, like, I couldn't stand you, or in my brain, like, you was just the worst person ever to me. Now that lens is still there and it never got resolved.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to conflict, like, we have to be quick, to address that, because if we don't, that's how we, I believe it's Ephesians 4:26, where it talks about, the devil having a foothold on you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because there is this anger that's still lingering.
That's Ephesians 4:26 and 27. It says, "And don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil." And I know this is something that, like, don't let the, we say a lot, don't let the sun go down. And then you see those memes and it's like, here we are, both of us up because we don't want to let the sun go down on our anger. So we're just looking at each other.
That's crazy.
And I don't think it's more so in a literal sense, right? But I do believe, like you said, there's some conflicts that we just have to manage and some things will not be resolved overnight. But I think it's the posture of your heart of like allowing that anger to control you and become sinful. And now it's a bitterness and now you're resenting your spouse. And now the enemy does have a foothold because for one, as women, I can only speak as a woman, we will let our minds run wild with whatever thought and scenario, assumption that, whatever story we tell ourselves about that scenario, if that's not resolved in terms of conflict. And I feel like the enemy really can have a way just mentally. And then now, like you said, it kind of like muddies the waters in the way that we see our spouses when it's unresolved. And so we have this thing in our marriage to recover quickly. It was marriage advice given from our mom and dad, actually. And it was something that stood with me. And I mean, we've used it. Like, let me tell you, I remember early on in our marriage.
Keep your thought. We are not brothers and sisters, by the way.
Wait.
I
think everyone knows that.
I don't know, because when you say like our mom and dad, like some people can take that
My mom and you know how it is.
But they don't know how it is.
Okay.
Some people can say like, are they?
Did y'all not know?
Is there endogamy going on here?
No, we don't play none of that.
Okay, all right. Just one.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, see, now you made me lose my train of thought. So recover quickly. Oh, I remember we had went on a date and you said something that just made me so sad and like so mad. And I remember like we have this thing, we were literally on our way to a date and I'm like, what makes you think that I want to go on a date with you? You know what I mean? Why would I now want to go on a date with you? And you was like, you grabbed my hand and then you prayed and it was just like, I can't even be mad. Like, I can't even be mad at you while you praying for me. So if you ever want to resolve your conflict, just grab their hand and just go on and pray. Because I feel like in that moment, it did shift something and we went on and we enjoyed our date. But the point is to recover quickly is to not let that moment ruin the day, ruin your mood, ruin weeks to come because you're holding on to this anger or this resentment. And so I think that's a strength in our marriage is the ability to recover quickly and to not hold grudges and to forgive easily. And if I could give one advice, I think that's the most solid marriage advice that we got.
Yeah, but even when you talk about that, so for one, to kind of piggyback off of what you said, like, I know you. And because I know you, because I have this understanding of you, like, I know that in those moments, like, praying is effective. Like, for some couples, praying in that moment, they be like, bro, you better get your hand off me.
True story.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't rock with you right now. So because I have an understanding of who you are, most times, like, if I don't like pray in that moment, or if I don't, do something like that, then it's usually my stuff, my selfishness, my ego that's getting in the way and stopping us from resolving conflict. And so when we talk about resolving conflict, oftentimes when we get hurt, now we have this defense, and it's like our ego is saying like, nah, we not gonna really settle for this, or I don't like the way you treated me, so now you're gonna have to kiss and we're gonna have to get this thing together. When in reality, you have to be aware of like what's stopping you from having the conversation.
Ooh, yeah.
Because when you talk about like, the devil getting a foothold and don't let the sun go down, like whether, and I'm not gonna say like, I don't know if that's like in the scripture, like that's like literal, but what I do get from that is there needs to be this urgency you have when it comes to resolving conflict.
Yes.
Because if you don't have an urgency about resolving the conflict, what you're doing is you're starting to grow like complacent in the middle of conflict. And now at this point you're coasting.
That's scary because that means you decided to pitch a tent. You living in that thing.
Exactly. And when you think about like just coasting, I don't even know if I shared this on one of the previous podcasts, but like I was reading this book, and in the book, like this dude was talking about how he was riding this canoe on a riding this canoe in like a river,
Mm-hmm.
and the river naturally flowed downstream.
Yeah.
And so in the river, like if you're not actively pedaling, if you're not like literally like working, you know what I'm saying, to go upstream, you're just gonna go where the river takes you.
Yeah.
And so when we think about like the culture that we're in, it's a stream that's taking you somewhere. And the stream in America is like, if it's broke, replace it. Like if it's broke, don't worry about fixing it because there's something better.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like we can replace it. We have technology to where we can, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so when you think about this idea of like needing to be urgent, it's like you need to be urgent because the longer you take to fix this problem, the more you flow downstream.
Mm-hmm.
The harder it's going to be to work through conflict in your marriage because now, like, the longer you take, the more layers that get piled up
Yeah.
on top of it. You know, and so when we talk about persevering is like literally like understanding that it's going to take work to row up this river.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? But you have to continue to endure because not only do you get further, but you also get stronger.
Mm.
And so even and I know we was going to talk about it later, but I'm going to talk about it here.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the scripture where James 1:2-4, you know what I'm saying, it talks about this perseverance, but then it also talks about perseverance having its finishing its work. And so it says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And so when you talk about conflict, your perspective on conflict is very, very important for the success and health of your relationship. Because if you are in a relationship and you view conflict as something that is an opportunity for us to grow closer and strengthen our bond, then while we're in conflict, you're looking at like you almost become optimistic. And I love that word because I think somebody in our family called you that. You know what I'm saying? The one thing they like about you is like you're optimistic.
Yeah.
And so when you look at conflict in an optimistic way, you're saying that the end goal for me, which is oneness, the end goal for me is literally death do us part. The end goal for me is having a healthy, happy, fun, loving, full of love marriage. Then when you look at conflict that's an opportunity to grow closer, then you get creative with how you strategize and you're looking for different ways. And now you have a curiosity about you, and you have a curiosity about your partner. Like, okay, well, what's stopping us from actually having this conversation?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes couples don't understand that there's almost like this pattern, or not this pattern, there's this negative cycle they have to overcome in order to actually have the conversation. And so once you understand that like challenges require perseverance, you know what I'm saying, for the health of your relationship, I think then you'll start to look at problems, you'll start to look at like your relationship entirely different.
Yeah. You said a lot. But one thing you were saying, like when you're looking at the end goal, and I feel like a lot of times when we go into conflict, we don't even have that in mind. Like when you have to have a tough conversation, what are you hoping to get out of it? What are your motives? What do you want to achieve in having this discussion? I feel like it can often come from a selfish motive of like, I just want to prove that I'm right here. And there's no actual real resolve that's going to solve or manage the conflict. And so before even approaching, let's say a confrontational conversation you would be having with your spouse, I think it's important to do it like a heart check, to check your heart. So before I have to bring anything to you, I'm going to take it to prayer first. And oftentimes when I do that, the Lord's like, it's you. Like, you don't even need to talk to him about that. This is you. Like, you're in the wrong here. Or I'll be convicted of something, or I'll pray for your heart in the timing of when to have that discussion, because I feel like all of those are factors in terms of when you're addressing something that may be a little bit tough or a little bit hard to converse and have. Another thing that I wanted to say is the differences that we have. You know, we often view the difficulties and the differences that we have within our spouses, or the differences, what makes us different, as problems and instead of solutions. And if you had the perspective of your spouse, like God created you guys in your differences to be everything that you need for one another, to strengthen one another, to sanctify, iron sharpens iron, to bring you guys together and make you the best version of yourself in terms of purpose, partnership. If you viewed it that way, then you would realize that your spouse is actually everything you need within your union. You have, and you wouldn't view the difficulties or the differences, their differences, as problems, but it's actually the solution to the conflict that you could be facing.
Yeah, and I do want to validate, and empathize with couples who do get in those conflicts. And I just want to like double down on something you said as far as the need to pray before you go into conflict, because whenever you're in conflict, like your emotional system responds one way. Like, and I'm not saying like you're always going to respond happy, but when your body is responding, um when your body is responding to keep you safe,
Mm-hmm.
like your mind process doesn't work, because when we're in conflict, like especially when we're in heated moments, like our body, God made us so wonderful. Like whenever we feel danger, our body responds. Like our body knows how to send signals and knows how to recruit, um, you know, certain things from one part of the body to go to the next part of the body, all for the sake of keeping you safe. And so when you're in conflict, your body doesn't know that this is necessarily a conversation. It just knows how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those moments, especially when it gets heated, like the body is saying like, danger, we need to go into protect mode, and whatever protect mode looks like for other people. So for example, like when we get into those tough conversations and my body feels like it's starting to not feel safe, pulling away makes my body feel safe.
Yeah.
And for you, it's like, uh-oh, danger, disconnection. I need to move closer. Like I need to make sure like we're still good.
Right.
Like your body is sensing danger. I need to make sure that, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to pursue you.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like, nah, like this is too much. This is too overwhelming. So I need to get away to regroup. And so in that moment, like your brain is not really processing that. Your body is like just responding.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes in conflict, because we don't prep to have those conversations, we usually respond in a way to where we're not even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's how we get in spaces where we say something we don't mean.
Yep. Can't take it back.
And we
Yep.
can't take it back. And now we got to deal with another layer of conflict, because now when we go back and have the same conversation, now I'm anticipating you to respond the way in which you responded before.
Yeah.
And so now I got to deal with that. And now we got to work through that before we get to the conflict. And so now it's just a compiled layer. And so you can see how when there's a lot of lag time, it makes it very difficult to solve those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's good. And our bishop actually just taught on anger, and it was just so profound to me. But something he was saying is like anger is something that, it seems like it's a little spark, but it can consume everything and actually destroy relationships. And that's something that I often hear about is like, okay, when they have this heated conversation and then there's words that's being said and you're attacking the person's character or you're demeaning them or tearing them down, you're saying things that you don't even mean. Like you said, in the moment when your body responds, sometimes your mouth just spews things that you don't even really mean in the moment. But words is something that we can't take back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often those negative words and those moments of conflict that will stick with you and stay with you that you don't forget and will cause you to really question, did you really mean that? You know what I mean? And it's hard to backpedal from moments like that. And so I think with regulating yourself, your body, praying, going into those conversations prepped with what are we addressing here and what's the end game and what are we wanting to resolve are all things that can help you as far as resolving or managing conflict.
Yeah.
Some of the challenges I think with conflict, honey, is just unmet expectations and sometimes unrealistic expectations. Like You
Okay.
can marry the right person and still go through hard times.
I'm gonna say it like this: you will marry the wrong or right person and will go through hard times.
True story.
Like, that's going to happen, because I even had I had a client who was terminating, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to or not, because he was like, well, what if I relapse? And I was just sharing with him, like, I mean, life, I mean, if life is going to be life, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to experience anxiety, you're going to experience, like, you know, these depressive or low moments in your life, grief, like all of that is a part of it. But once we get to a place of, you know what I'm saying, you feel like you need to come back in,
Right.
you know, but like, it's a part of it. Like, conflict is a part of life.
Yep.
And the unrealistic expectations, like, they do play a big part in what makes it challenging.
Yeah. And they expect it to be like effortless, like we just gonna be good. And I think that's where you can get into just coasting, or you can get into autopilot, or you become roommates and you're just in survival mode. And I think the avoidance is a huge part of it too, because avoiding conflict and not communicating those
Yeah.
needs or expectations, then there's never going to be any resolve, because we don't even know that there's an issue that needs to be addressed to begin with. You know what I mean? And then, you know how they say you're sweeping things under the rug, and now we have all this mess that we're stepping over that's not being resolved. So again, it is inevitable, but I think communication and discussing that and having a plan, because when you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
Yeah,
and I know we don't
for sure.
we don't look at it like that. We see it with goals and things, but like, yes, in conflict, what is the plan? What are the things we will not say? Like, for us, we're not going to threaten divorce. You're not going to call me out my name. We're not going to cuss, and we're not going to yell, you know, and that's just how we navigate conflict. But we talked about this in the dating before we even got married. Like, look, if you yelling at me, then my body going to shut down,
I had to
and I'm
let
out.
you know I'm not getting married.
Oh, you
if
not?
you're talking to me
Yeah,
crazy.
right. What's crazy is that I'm actually like naturally a loud person, but in conversations, when we communicate, especially with conflict, like we talk literally like we are right now. Like, we're just having a discussion about it. And I feel like it makes it less intense or confrontational or argumentative. It's like, no, we can sit down and talk about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, of course, we got a marriage emotion challenge.
I feel like we need some music right there. But okay, yes, tell us.
You tell us what the marriage emotion
Okay, wait.
challenge is.
Okay. So I think this is going to be a good one. It's going to bless you.
Yes.
Okay. So reflect on a recent conflict that you guys have had. Schedule a time. Again, space, time, prep your heart before you go into the conversation, and have an end goal in mind. But discuss what you did wrong, what you want to do better, and create a plan. When we are in these moments of high conflict, how are we going to persevere? Who are we going to call? Who are we going to talk to? Make sure you have a game plan. And the reason why we do these marriage emotion challenges is so that you can practically apply what we're talking about and teaching you in our episodes. So this is not just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna hear this. Like, no, actually do it, and you will begin to see your marriage actually thriving, which is what we're all about, is helping you to thrive after the altar. But those small challenges and moments, the momentum will be rolling, and you will see yourself growing in your marriage. But especially if we're trying to persevere in the area of commitment and being committed through the highs and the lows of marriages, because it's not a matter of if, but when these moments arise. We want you to be equipped with what you need, and every marriage is different. So only you can come up with that plan. So let us know what you got out of this episode. Share it with somebody you know that can benefit from it. And don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. And thank you for watching this video.
Yes, your marriage can thrive after the altar.
It definitely can.
This is We Still Do. And remember, keep your marriage in motion.
Yes.
Peace.
We find a good thing, even after the altar. It's marriage in motion.